Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. We invite you now to share with us this open and honest panel discussion on reimagining the communication beyond COVID-19 in partnership today, Healing to Recovery. So in the context of the Anna Lindh Foundation virtual marathon on cultural diversity for dialogue, we have decided to tackle the issue of stereotypes, of xenophobia, of racism beyond COVID-19, just to reevaluate how we are as human beings. This pandemic has actually reset a lot of priorities, and we just want to tackle the issue of racism and xenophobia and see how we are moving. Hopefully, we're moving forward from the pre-COVID-19 to a post-COVID-19 world. So we invite our incredible speakers today. We thank you so much for being here, and we're extremely honored to have you. I would like to call on Diana. If you would like to introduce yourself, please, to us and everybody, and we can move on to the next speaker. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm Diana, and I'm representing JAKE, Group of the European Youth for Change. I'm a head of digital, and we are working with youth for youth to tackle hate speech, especially online, but also under the direction of human rights and democracy. We work on fostering intercultural dialogue. We work on tackling youth radicalization, and especially empowering young people with tools for human rights education and for participating more and for creating this peace building environment. So the topic is really relevant for our work. I'm really glad to be here. And I just want to also mention that besides the organization I'm representing, my journey on with this topic that is really dear to me started when I was an EVS volunteer. So and I worked directly with migrants and with refugees for 1 year. So I think having these opportunities to hear stories, to share perspectives are really powerful and important to have. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, and I love that you're working with youth in particular. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting way to see how youth actually see. You know, they went through the pandemic while in their formative years, no? So it's very interesting to see how it's going to impact them, like especially with the digitalization of everything that we're doing. It's very interesting to see how we can tackle these issues. Aurora, would you please take this space to introduce yourself to us, and maybe your connection to migration also. And yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So I presented like this, me as a migrant, me as a professional, and what I call agent of change. So as a migrant, I moved from Spain to Switzerland, where I spent 10 years. Then I moved to Norway, where I've been since January last year. And also I spent 6 months in Singapore, and I like to point that out because it was such a big experience in terms of migrants, because there's so many different cultures living together, and it was such a shocking and learning experience. So even though it was short, it was very impactful. Professional, I wrote these 3 aspects: communication. I worked in the UN when I was in Geneva, and there I was working for migration. So I got the chance to be in contact with the migration politics, which are very slow moving motion. And I got this feeling when I was working with diplomacy. Then I've worked as a social educator with mental disabled communities, and actually as a coach. Currently working as a coach and agent of change, because I think, as we were talking the other day about social entrepreneurship and everything, all you do can be just moving for change. And so the first one is Enriquecernos Juntas, which is a community that we built here in Norway for Spanish-speaking women. So we get together and we get the chance, we give the chance to talk, to express feelings, to share, and it's really working very well, and people are telling us how important it is. And that's an important point, like how to authenticate, being authentic, integrating, but trying to still be you with your culture, bringing what you are without being held back. And that's a very important point, and I think in this subject. Resilience workshops for companies mostly. We're trying with another coach to bring resilience into the business world, talking about emotions, talking about, so there we're going to try to touch the Norwegian companies. And the third one, holistic coach. So it's my my coaching professionalization with groups and individuals. So my point with this Enriquecernos Juntas is very important, like how to empower from within. Migrants in any situation, anywhere, any kind of migrants, how to empower from within, which is a big point in the topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aurora. I absolutely love that. I mean, we're big fans. Anila as well will testify. We're big fans of the way that you present yourself. It's so visual and so satisfying. It's absolutely incredible. But thank you so much. I mean, it's very interesting to actually maybe even highlight the difference between the migratory experiences, because they can be very similar, but very different at the same time. And the circumstances around them can be varying. So that's very interesting that you mentioned, you know, the different places that you've been a migrant in. So thank you so much, Aurora. We're super excited to see what you have to say. I would call on Seyran next, maybe. Seyran, would you please go ahead?
Hi, yes, of course. So hi, very happy to be here, and thanks for having me. It's very, very special and very important topic. So I'm Seyran Khalili. I'm based also in Norway, in Oslo. So I'm kind of representing many different things, and I think first of all I'm been part of New Women Connectors, and also working with developing a project for youth connectors, focusing especially on migrant youth who have a background, who are based in Europe, and who need perhaps some sort of similar connections, just as we do, kind of to basically understand each other. I've been working in the field of migration for as long as I can remember. I think it was just a natural path for me as being a migrant from a very young age. So it's always been something that I've been interested in. I started very early to start to work with the research side of it. So I've been part of quite a lot of different research projects, focusing especially on migrant youth and also unaccompanied asylum seekers as well, looking at basically young people's development, their quality of life, how they integrate in the multicultural context. So all of these things have kind of been part of the journey, how to say. And what I perhaps like about that, and I find that important, is that we often talk about migrants as a lot of things we know, but when it comes to creating policies, when it comes to kind of creating the change, you always need to say, look at the facts, or what is the numbers, or and this thing is something that I really want to work on, because there is a lot of things we know, but we when it comes to kind of the things we call that are kind of it's an important factor, but of course, but but we need to always have something to base it on. So that's kind of perhaps been my biggest kind of factor to highlight, is that we know it exists, and we should absolutely focus on it, because we need the answers, and how can we find those answers? So creating measures to promote psychosocial adaptation as well, to how to adapt in terms of mental health among children and also young people in multiculturalism context. So basically what I do in my work, my background is in organizational psychology. I really like also to look at the journey in terms of also how we create systems where we take in a user perspective, because we are no longer living in a sense of being able to just receive, but we also can shape and design and form those services that we receive, and be able to be part of that co-creation. This has kind of been what I've been working mostly on.
That's not a small task that you've that you've taken upon yourself. But I mean, I love one thing that you actually. I mean, I love everything that you said, but one thing that you mentioned was about the mental health, and I think that's also a very interesting maybe point to consider. What is the impact of mental health on the integration maybe of migrants and their adaptation processes in times of high stress, such as the COVID-19 situation. I think it has impacted a lot of us. It increased a lot of the gaps, and it kind of highlighted a lot of the parodies that we already have. So I mean, but thank you so much for mentioning that. I would move on to Shaza. Hi, Shaza. Please take the floor.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for this invitation. It's my honor to be here today. Maybe I am sharing also my personal story, which is related so much to the migration issue, that I am now a refugee. So I know this long story of being forced to leave your country and go through all these issues until you are settled up in a host country, and then what you are facing until you became a citizen. So in this regard, I will speak about my experience today and how we see the impact of the pandemic on all this, the road of the refugees and the migrants, and how that affected their life actually. At the beginning, I used to work with UNHCR as a UNHCR staff, so I used to deal with the refugees and migrants and asylum seekers. But then the life changed, and my life became much harder and harsh. So I became a refugee myself, and during this journey, I learned a lot actually, and I know how the resilience that refugees are to stand up for their rights and to stand up for build a new life, and so on. And I will focus more about the women and the gender inequality during this journey and during these issues related to migration. And I think the pandemic is really negatively impacted the refugees in general, and especially the women and the girls and LGBTIQ and so on. So we can see during this time the stress that are facing because of the isolation and being kept inside. Children are not attending school and being apart from your families because of the travel restrictions, and the family reunification were stopped. And then during this journey of the seeking asylum, you were kept, like so many people are kept in camps under bad circumstances with a crowded a number of refugees inside with no way to to reach out to the education or to the health services or food even. So it's so many things that we can talk about during this amazing session. So I will share more during our session, but this is my background. I am a sociologist as well. So this is how I also think about the migration as a component that were negatively, we can say, affected by the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Shaza. I mean, you've mentioned so many things that I mean probably impacted a lot of, or maybe the majority of people. But when we're talking about a refugee or a migrant, these experiences have a completely different dimension. I think they have a completely different impact, and especially like with the sense of security and the basic human needs. I think that sometimes migrants and refugees actually lack, especially women. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it was from a migrant/refugee woman point of view. So thank you so much. I would call on Anila next. If you want to go ahead, introduce yourself briefly. Although everybody knows you, Anila, but please do go ahead.
Thank you so much, Razan. And it's always pleasure to share this panel with so much, intelligent, brave woman, which I must say is always give me energy and hope, and I stay more energetic to keep doing what we are doing. So my name is Anila Noor. Originally, I'm from Pakistan, and in Pakistan, I never realized, like my father, he also migrated from occupied Indian Kashmir, and we were children of forced migration, and we are now again in this journey of migration. Europe give me so much question, which still I asked in Pakistan, I am asking here. In Pakistan, if you are a woman, they take you as a burden, and here again, if you're a refugee migrant, they take you as a burden. They do not take you as valuable, a person who can contribute. So I will talk about healing and recovery, what after pandemic we really need, and to focus how to make sure the themes it's according to the people. It shouldn't be only passive receiver, especially for a migrant community. They shouldn't make such kind of policy who reproduce their racism, who reproduce their exploitation. So that's why I will talk about it. And thank you so much, Razan, for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Anila. I mean, goes without saying. Absolutely, our experiences do form a massive part of our identity, and we actually carry a lot of the experiences that we hold. We don't like to be, and I think maybe it's something that we can actually tackle is that how it is to be identified by our traumas, but at the same time, I don't think it's very healthy to be identified by our traumas, but at the same time, I think it is very valid to identify our experiences. So thank you so much. I mean, it would be extremely interesting to hear what your thoughts on that. And lastly, I would like to call on Yuanfeng. She's also part of New Women Connectors, and we're very happy to have her here today.
Hello, ladies. Nice to meet you. I'm Yuan. I'm from China. I'm now an intern at New Women Connectors. My background is in international development studies, and I work on gender equality related social policies. And also I have another master on translation and interpretation of Chinese and Japanese. And I worked in UNWFP, the World Food Program, before on emergency food aid towards North Korea. My background is more in East Asian studies and also gender equality related studies. And it was not very much related to migration, but I think my background gave me uniqueness in the work here, and also the humanitarian work are all intersectional, so it's somehow linked to each other. And I hope to learn a lot from you, and also looking forward to our discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuanfeng. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Just a really quick maybe intro about myself. My name is Razan Ismail, originally Syrian. I've been a migrant since 2010. I lived in the UK for around 8 years, and then I moved to Spain and to Barcelona. And currently I'm the communication manager for New Women Connectors, and I'm also the founder of Qudwa Association, which is here in Barcelona. I'm also with the expert group on migrant views with the European Commission, along with Anila as well. So I really want to welcome you today. I don't want to take too much from your time, so I would like to start the conversation just to kind of maybe have a general overview of how were the views on migrations before COVID, and how did the pandemic actually change those views? And I mean, we have heard a lot of debate probably about migration. Everything was shut down. The views were kind of conflicting. Even the access to healthcare, to the vaccine, even access to digital tools have been highlighted during the pandemic. So how did the pandemic maybe impact the views on migration? How was it before? How is it now? Do you expect that it's going to change afterwards? Is it going to be positive or negative? Taking into consideration the role that migrants actually took during the pandemic, which was an incredible, massive role, in fact. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Yuanfeng, you are on my screen. Would you like to start with that, and then we can move on to our next speakers? Yes, please. You just stayed on my screen. I thought we'd start with you.
Yes, sure. Sorry, my network connection is not very good here. Yes, I think I worked in Netherlands for around 6 months with NWC for now, and I can see from the communities of immigrations in Netherlands have been very much impacted by the pandemic. After it started, especially the lockdown, most people, especially refugees, that they have more difficulties in having access to the healthcare, to medical information and knowledge, and also including the information around the vaccines. And for people who live in asylums and asylums, we know that we have been knowing that they have difficulty in, for example, keeping this social distance or having basic cleaning utensils or tools, and it was very horrible. And personally, I am also a migrant in Netherlands as a Chinese, and I experienced some hate speech, some racism to myself also, and it was very heartbroken. And I do hope that it will go better after the pandemic goes better, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that's my idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan. I think, yeah, I suppose that, you know, the future is still very unknown for most of us, which is absolutely, I mean, going into the unknown. Everybody's going into the unknown. There's no actual proper plan, I think, and we can't really see the future. So it's a bit dark. Maybe seeing it now. Hopefully, it's gonna get better. I mean, I completely understand, because I'm Syrian, obviously, and I saw how people's views changed when the war actually started as well. So I completely understand how perhaps we can even talk about like the media and how it impacts the views on migration. Even Diana, would you like to maybe highlight and give your point of view?
Sure. I wanted to build off of what Yuanfeng just shared about hate speech, because it's something that we are constantly dealing with, and we observe, especially online. And now with the pandemic, with everything going online, it has increased among young people, among people of all ages. And we had many Romanians going abroad, being migrants in other parts of the world. And with COVID, they had to return, a lot of them. So the hate speech towards the countries that sent them back or did not have proper condition to support them. And then it turned into hate speech towards migrants that come here. And I remember a case last year, exactly when the pandemic was, at peak. Here in Romania, there was a case with two migrants that faced a lot of hate speech. They got some work into a bakery, and the employer told them that they cannot work there anymore. And they had support groups with lots of online hate speech. And it was very awful to see how more and more people joined this. So I think, especially with online tools, it's really important to use those as an opportunity to build these counter narratives. And I wanted to highlight something that we had the result from some online focus groups with young people that we did in May. We had a partnership with Unicef. So regarding this hate speech, young people said that even in school, they face this, and educators and teachers do almost nothing. So I think it's important to highlight their role, the role of youth workers, the role of educators and teachers in actually being more active towards tackling this. And we also had a really interesting idea. I want to point out that even in the curriculum, there is lots of hate speech and even some narratives that are missing. So how to include those, how to make those visible, how to point out and emphasize narratives that could include everyone while in school. So maybe I can share later on one project we are working on now. But yeah, these are some thoughts that came to my mind when I heard about the hate speech.
I mean, that's a very interesting take on, I mean, usually, yeah, I mean, definitely, usually we hear from the migrants or refugees, but it was very interesting to understand how it kind of like changed for the host community as well, that, you know, where it started, where it is at the moment, like even kind of how it developed, perhaps. How the hate speech actually developed. And it's very interesting that you say that it is increasing. I mean, I personally have this is just a personal theory that hate amplifies online, but perhaps in the real world, there is more love. I hope that's the case. I'm not really sure, but we do hear that the negative voices are a lot louder online, which is very interesting, and it's still harmful, extremely harmful. Shaza, would you like to share your experience with us on kind of like how did you see the change in views on migration, maybe before, during, and hopefully now that we're getting vaccinated? Is it changing? Is the narrative changing? How is the view kind of developing?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the situation before, it was going to be harsh for the refugees and migrants. So it was, if I'm speaking about Europe, if we can say, so Europe was working a lot to limit the migration and to do whatever they can just to close the border or to protect the continent, and then no one can pass and so on. So I feel like this pandemic is coming to support this idea. So once it's hit by pandemic, everyone closed the borders. If you look, like Hungary is putting a lot of conditions, so people are not able to even enter. So it makes it more and more closed, and zero migrants or refugees enter the country. So I think first everyone closed their borders. They put a lot of strict instructions for travel, ban someone from being inside or with difficult conditions. So for sure it's affected negatively. So many family unification process were stopped. So many people were kept for longer time than before, just in inhuman situation, if we can say. So people were really locked as I don't want to say as animal in cages or something like that, and you can see how it was. And the situation as a health part, if we can say, became harder and harder. And this is for the movement, if we can speak. If we go and look about the other dimension, which is the labor market, for example, it is a lot difficult for refugees or for migrants to be integrated in the labor market, and it was hardly an opportunities for people to be there and working there. And this is what happened once the pandemic hit. So many of refugees or migrants were being quitted from work or from job, either because of the less education or less experiences that they have for the digitalization, for example, or for the seniority at work. So if you would like to cut your staff, you start by the junior ones, most probably. So in many dimensions, the refugees and the migrants were the one who is affected by this labor market pandemic effectiveness. So so many of them are lost their works. If we go to the education, for example, the education dimension or the education factor, we can also see that children, the migrants' children and the refugees' children were also suffered from being out of the school. We can see a lot of people out of the school in the camps, where in the countries like Italy or Greece or whatever, so they have no school, no education at all. But even though in the settled and in the northern countries, like in Germany, if I can say, children should stay at home for protection, so they have to do this online schooling, which is also so hard for the refugees and migrants to deal with that with their children in different language, in a strange language, and to understand the whole system, and with a lot of other requirement, like digital requirement, which is somehow also not easy and not available for everyone. So you need a big space. If you have 5 children or 4 children, and each one of them need a computer or tablet, and you cannot put all of them in one room, and then they will not understand many online schooling. So you have also to distribute them. So it's really hard. And for parents, they are suffering with understanding the language and the requirement and what the school needs from that. So it's also not easy. And I think this is negatively affected. And for the gender in general, so many women, if you have to choose, because the kindergarten were closed. So if you have to choose who will go work and who will be babysitting or who will do the work, even online. So most of the time in our community, unfortunately, the woman should quit and sit and take care of the children. So also, if they have the privilege to continue working, the family pushed them to quit the work. So I think it was really negatively affecting in many dimensions of the life of the migrants. And in addition to what already mentioned by our colleague Seyran, the psychosocial effect, which is being isolated in one place with all these struggles, and the integration level were also postponed, while the refugee should stay at home or do these close classes, the integration classes online, which is more difficult than being integrated with a community, social chatting or whatever. Then everything is just stopped. So I think the life is really dramatically changed, and I hope it's reopen again and be more better, but so far I'm not seeing that much. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Shaza. I mean, obviously, we're not saying that the pandemic has only been difficult on migrants, but in all fairness, you know, because migrants and refugees have already a harder life, a harder, we're starting even below the start line. So it was even harder on them. Obviously, a lot of local people have lost their jobs. However, they do have their social security systems. They have their knowledge of the system as well. They have the language. They have probably digital access. Whereas for the migrant and refugee families and people, and especially women, like you said, Shaza, it was even like double, triple, even quadruple negative impact. And even to recover from that, I think it's going to take the migrant community such a longer time to even recover, because let's face it, we're not a priority in general. It's not the priority of the, you know, especially the European countries at the moment, I think. Aurora, I would like to ask you here, like, what do you think, how can we build our resilience in such difficult situations and circumstances? Because you mentioned that you do resilience workshops, and I think until something drastic happens positively, I mean, we're going to have to rely on our resilience to keep on going. And I would love to hear, you know, what do you think? How can we actually build our resilience in such difficult circumstances?
It's interesting because I come from, as you were saying, like the start level, a bit not in these situations we're talking about. Already this discussion is broadening my point of view, because what I see is at my level in where I am. So it's already different. We have digital access. I've been talking to women who are taking the advantage of this digitalization to start small businesses. So I've seen the side, the bright side, maybe not the bright side, but the side that gives opportunity to people that didn't have a business to open one, to be there, to be seen by others, to broadcast, to start cooking for others and getting some money, to show all the skills online and give courses. So it's completely different, and that's why it's so interesting to talk with all of you today. But resilience, I guess, it's the same for all. Coming from wherever, resilience is the opportunity to come back after the shock. So first, receive the shock. So how do you react to whatever is happening to you? And that really depends on how you've been raised and how you've seen others in your family to react to changes, to react to trauma, to how your resources are, how your emotional intelligence is, the capacity you have to deal with some emotions and some others that you are not very familiar with. But taking that, you get the shock, that you realize you're going through something, how you come back and say, okay, let's do something about it. Let's go further. Let's try. And in this trying, I think it's essential how strong you feel, and not as strong in terms of economical power, change, capacity of change, capacity of connection, language, or it's just how powerful you feel inside, like how your light, and this might be, you know,
your energy, maybe your energy level. Do you think?
But energy comes later. It's more about light, like light. How your light is still glowing. How do you still feel you have something to give, and that you're valuable, and that you have something to share. And if you go there and heal it or perceive, if you're still in contact with this light, then you can find energy, and then you can find purpose, and then you can, I mean, of course, the context that we're talking about is needs to let you find the way, right? And if it's if you're in a camp, if you're, I mean, it's very tough for me to say this when we're talking about this very hard context. But still, there's something that I really feel it's essential, is to keep the light going. And that is almost something you do personally with yourself, and that you can build up. That's a good point of it, that you can actually go and take care of it. But so if you manage to keep it, the light, to keep it there, then you might find the energy, and then you might find the opportunity, and have the will and the perseverance, and to go for something, and to try to find the way, to be resilient, to be able to adapt to whatever comes. But this light, and how do you take care of it? That's I mean, it's a lifetime job. But we see when we share here, or in women group, in whatever group, or whatever relationship where you can share and be listened, it's already something. I mean, from my professional perspective, I see it's already a big thing, like to be listened to, and to feel respected in a loving way, whatever you come with, whoever your situation, whoever you are, to feel valued. So first step.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, I love what you said, actually. I mean, resilience definitely comes from within, but it does help to feel heard and to feel supported. And I love that, because a lot of the time they say and talk about migrants or refugees as vulnerable. And to be honest, like, what is vulnerable about that? Definitely not vulnerable. We're probably one of the strongest people out there if we were able to actually be here today. So there's nothing vulnerable. We are in a vulnerable situation. We've been put in a vulnerable situation by systems, but as people, we're not vulnerable, and we have a lot of resilience. But I love that it's still, like, with all of the resilience that, you know, migrants or refugees might have, we still need support. Like, we still need to firstly support each other, feel supported, feel heard, feel respected. And that's like because absolutely, you might lose that light inside of you at the end. Like, you keep fighting and fighting, and you might lose that light if you don't feel that. So thank you so much. I love that point. Seyran, I would love to hear your opinion, maybe on that, on like how can we maybe feel supported in this time. I know we've kind of like moved away a little bit from the original question, but I love how it's flowing. How can we feel like supported and perhaps heard in this time? Do you think that are migrants or refugees heard by their government, or by their local communities, or by each other? Or I don't know, maybe the question is like, are we heard, and how can we actually make each other heard? Perhaps.
I think it's a really relevant question. I can just start by saying, you know, when I see the world from my parents' perspective, I get really sad. And that is mainly because both of my parents are migrants as well, but because also I've had a really close contact with them throughout the COVID situation. I've called and notified them with the new information that's coming. I've given them the information. So this is just one example of the lack of support, because I've been their support. I've given them information that the government failed to give them in a proper manner. So what they didn't understand, I kind of provided that to them and told them all the different changes, because there were changes all the time. Pandemic, there was a lot of lack of information, and this is something that's probably contributed most to the social differences and to the differences we see here today. I'm also based in Norway, as Aurora mentioned, that I guess it's a difference of, it's a story of two different cities, really. We're living in one city where there is, you know, people have working from home, they have their different possibilities of all having this available, but for those who are from in the perspective of minorities, migrants and refugees, it's a whole different story of lack of support, and especially lack of information, where it took a long time until there was created this information in different languages, or that this was distributed or made public, that this information is also being available in their own languages, which was a huge part of getting those measures and getting those rules and regulations into these sections. And one thing is that now there has been kind of a desperate question of why in many countries, and especially in Norway, the highest rate of those who are affected by the COVID have been in the migrant different communities. And this is a really interesting question, not to just point out which kind of community, but to really ask why this has been, because in these communities, these people have also been those who have been in the forefront, working in the different levels, in the forefront of being those who delivered in the cab business, taxi business, or in the healthcare business. These families are mostly those who are in the forefront, and also those who most probably have taken back the COVID in their homes, or probably most of them are living in a different social communities, have smaller apartments. So there is this lack of support on one hand, saying that, you know, this is a group who have a higher level of kind of challenges, but at the same time, the government doesn't do anything to support them. So when you really point out this, I guess it's the lack of information that has been not good enough from the start, but also while they have been kind of in this forefront, and as Aurora mentioned, not having anyone who's listened to them really, or who've been trying to provide adequate measures. And we see this also now with the vaccination. It's going slower. So all of this is in the need of support. I guess this has been kind of a stress test for the different countries on how one can at one point kind of test on how we can handle this diversity and how we are good at leading the diversity. So I absolutely believe that when it comes to support, we need to look at partial explanation and not only one explanation, because it's about the family ties of these communities. It's about understanding how kind of these family ties are important for many, and also how this, for example, a lot of people have been mentioning that that these have kind of been, you know, that there's been gatherings for either for weddings or for this or that, but these are all kind of really essential parts of kind of coexisting as well. And it's here where we need to understand culture together and also support that culture in a better way and have them part of it. I guess one thing that's really important in terms of support is being able to communicate and creating non-traditional channels for communication. One thing is especially the kind of government government sites or the government pages, but another thing is, where do we actually listen today? Where is our focus with the digital areas? A lot of migrants, especially minorities, they seek information through other places, especially being more creative by using channels where they actually are. So we need that support of information, but we also need the support from the governments to kind of really lift up this we've been a key resource in being in the front line of so many important tasks when it comes to different kind of deliveries, different products, and different things that have been completely necessary. Just by looking at who has been the one that's been at the forefront of the cleaning and maintenance. These are so many unique perspectives that need support. So in terms of support, I absolutely think that there's been this kind of support also where the politicians need to kind of really lift up and see society as a source of diversity, being able to kind of lead that and not point to them and say, here we have a high risk society, or here we have more high, but we need to support them. So I absolutely think one of the most important ways one can support is by providing adequate information, and also having ambassadors and representations in these communities who can give the right information, and who can also the kind of being able to leverage on feeling that one is part of it and not just one is on the receiving end, but you're part of this support system.
Thank you so much, Seyran. Thank you for the, it's a great analysis actually of the role. So that was going to be the next question actually, is like, what is the role of the migrant communities right now in these countries? And to be honest, I'm personally also a little bit conflicted, or I can see two kind of opposite trends, which one is pushing migration towards the back of the priorities for the reasoning that, no, we're now dealing with a global pandemic, and, you know, we have different priorities right now, which is the healthcare and the vaccination and getting the economy, blah, blah, blah. But then there's also another kind of direction whereby they're saying that, well, no, we can use the migrant workers at the moment as essential workers or as healthcare workers, especially because they have this type of vocation just because of specific circumstances. So the two kind of contradicting kind of directions, neither of them actually is fair to migrants, and they're both actually equally damaging, I think. Anila, what do you think? What do you think about that? Like, which direction do you think us moving towards? And how? I don't know. Let me know what you think.
Thank you, Razan. It's very big question and very so complicated. I can't say, okay, we will do this and this. No, because there are so many elements always, embedded, and they are so complex and overlapping. It's difficult. Migration happened in history, and it's gonna stay there. We admit or not, people will move one place to other place due to economical reason, due to life reason, due to now climate change. You never know. But the thing is that who have the privilege when someone move to other country, who get expat, who will get poor burden as a refugees, or who get, okay, they are stateless, they're undocumented due to system. So this is the point we as a leader, we as a representative of communities need to stay and to not let this policy again to manipulation. to create such kind of racism system, because this systematic system is so stubborn and so difficult, even you can't identify where are the gaps. Like yesterday, I was listening to one lecture by Professor Gloria Wecker, and she was saying she is from Suriname. And because of her color, because she is not from here, and no one accept her as expert, but she fight, and still she is doing. It's called white innocence. So policies are doing same. They just say, oh, we didn't know. That's why we need to consult you. That's why we need to know what you are doing and how we can help you. No, it's about how they are actually open to understand what we are doing. It's almost like more than 6 years I'm involved in so many global and European level discussion. And I always say, we migrant refugees, especially people of color, when we criticize, they get uncomfortable level in this kind of uh, talk. They just invited us, so we praise them and we say them, oh, thank you so much for inviting us, and that's it. But no, we are not that much. So this COVID gave us, we are our own. And I always say Europe is our home. And when you want to improve your home, sometime you need to do the reconstruction. You need to sometime, start from the scratch. And this COVID really gave us opportunity how we can restart and how we can reimagine and how we can accept, yes, this is not working, so we need to fix it. Racism is there, exploitation is there, stereotypical images are there. There's so much is happening, but the thing is that I am hopeful, optimistic by putting this kind of events, getting connect with each other, and to see so many resilient women. If you see and you talk, and me and Shaza working a lot on a different level, and we were saying, we said, okay, go and just tap the word refugee, and you will see vulnerable images of women, especially, crying and feeling miserable, and people, and there's one famous INGO who always say, okay, we are new UN agency and we are helping them. And if you put leaders, what will see? You will see white men putting like, oh, we are Superman. But we want to change that. We really want to know the role model. That's why what we are doing at New Women Connectors and with so many other multi-stakeholder, we are doing because we are really getting fed up. The fatigue level of this activism is getting so high. We talk about psychology, we talk about connection, solidarity, but the thing is that we really hardly have time. The bomb of climate change is always on our head. Just like COVID didn't let anyone, but the thing again, I felt is become like who is fit in healthy way, who is rich in wealth, they can survive. But for those people, so I don't want to make it a very sensitive discussion, but this is complicated. The thing what we are trying to do, we're really trying to do this kind of awareness call to not let this happen again, because Europe is our home and we really care and love our home.
I love that. Thank you so much, Anila. I think that that brings us, maybe I'm going to skip one question, by the way, but because you mentioned it, and I think it's such an incredible segue, I think, to what we really want out of the whole thing that we're doing today, the whole session, is about like how the COVID actually highlighted these stereotypes and these biases. And they're not only as unconscious biases, they became conscious biases, they became real physical, psychological, economical kind of bias in the system that genuinely works as barriers to us being actually heard. But at the same time, and I know that during the COVID-19, because everything went online, we have been invited to so many different things. But at the same time, that also highlighted the bias of the problem of tokenization and the stereotypes and how we're just typecast into that victim kind of role. It's just highlighted so many different things. And I would love to ask, and I want to go back to Diana, how do you think we can actually use this time break out of these. Maybe let's talk about maybe something related to your work. How can we maybe help the youth even break out of these set boxes and preconceived images that have been literally implanted in their heads, probably in all of our heads? How can we use this time, because it's a very complicated time, how can we use this to kind of change that? I don't know if you have an answer to that. That's a really big question.
That's a challenging question indeed, but it's an opportunity for us to reflect, because indeed there are challenging times, but there is also an opportunity to foster this dialogue and to bring in these discussions and raise the awareness. And I want to go back to some points. I really love the discussion here that were made. We were talking about the challenges in online education, especially for young people, refugees, migrants that don't know the language, that also digital divide. And we were talking about the knowing how can we contribute in the community, what's our role, what can we bring to the table. And this leads exactly to the education and how teachers and youth workers and educators, how they can manage diversity in the classroom, how they can manage integrating these refugees and migrants in all the activities, and how they can create those narratives, and how they can let young people create their own narratives. We were talking about including them, but including just as passive actors. So we are bringing, again, we are reinforcing actually these stereotypes, maybe unconsciously. So one way to break those stereotypes would be to let the young people create their own narratives. And I wanted to share with you one project we are involved in, Diverse Project, which is in the frame of Erasmus Plus program, consortium coordinated by Action Synergy with partners from 6 countries, and we are one of the partners. And what we did was working with teachers in order to improve their competencies to increase the management of diversity in the classroom, especially with children from refugee and migrant background. The challenge that they found in the classroom was how to bring in these narratives that are lacking from the curriculum, that are lacking from the activities, especially in the online world, where it's even harder to get involved when you don't know the language, when you cannot express yourself, when you did not form those bonds with your colleagues. So what we did was that we brought and explored 3 methods: creative drama, activity based on folks and fairy tales, and digital storytelling. Exploring those with teachers and helping them to empower young people to create these narratives and bring them in the classroom, both online but also in the offline classes. So we are going to release soon an impact report. We are going to share those with you, but I think it's important to share these awareness activities, and it's important also to talk about it. And I think from that we can start and make a change, and start with young people. You were mentioning how can refugees and migrants be heard by the government and local community. Imagine that young people do not feel heard and do not feel involved in any of what is happening in their communities. And refugees and migrants who are young people, even less. So giving them a voice, giving them an opportunity to tell their story in the way they feel like it, expressing their identity and connecting to each other, I think could be a solution, and fostering this intercultural dialogue, even virtual exchanges now that it's maybe not possible all the time to meet in person, but also focusing on the quality and who makes the who creates the narratives. Again, not to be passive participants, not to be passive and not to be shown as victims, but really with their own identity, and also giving them the opportunity to find out how they can contribute and how they can participate, because they can really bring innovation, they can bring creative ideas, and this diversity can actually add value to what we are building post COVID pandemic. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, I would love for you to share with us about the project if you wish. Anila, would you like to say something?
Yes, I just want to say to Diana, yes, this is very important, and thank you so much for sharing, because this is actually the narratives part is so in the corner, like everything you think, okay, this is valuable or not valuable, just look the marketing. Why they do the marketing? Because they really giving the knowledge, okay, to own this, okay, this is good for you, this is not good for you. So this narratives, how we describe something and how we describe ourselves is really important. I just want to say that, and thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Anila. Shaza, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about maybe like leaving the pandemic with, or how can we leave the pandemic and break the stereotypes that we've been typecast as? How can we, if there's a chance to actually, or a way to use the pandemic, the time right now to actually break those stereotypes, how would it be? How would you see it?
Yeah, actually, during the pandemic, also the refugees and the immigrants were shown as an active player, because even in the host communities, when every international and national and local NGOs and all these people were closed and having the lockdown and were afraid to go and support, I think the migrants and refugees were brave to go and support and help voluntarily, and also they tried to do the best to be active and to be helpful and supporter to their communities, whether it's in camps or in the host communities or anyway. So I think it was a big change and was shown by everyone that that refugees and migrants have a role, and they have an active role, which is changing even the narrative and the image of being passive, being receivers, being vulnerable, and so on. So I think though the pandemic were having a lot of negative impacts, but also in this regard, it shows that resilience of the refugees and migrants, to see how they are ready to face this such situation. So many refugees and migrants started doing the hygiene kits and masks when we have this problem of the mask lockness. So many of them supporting the elderly, they helping them. So I think in a way or another, there is a way of changing the image and the stereotype about the refugees and migrants being passive. The other thing, it was a lesson for every one of us that you have to think about how to improve your digitalization awareness, your knowledge, how to be ready to face whatever situation is, how to manage. So I think also even the community, I'm trying here to talk about from the perspective of refugee and migrants. So I know the host community also do the same for sure, but I'm just trying to be from the other side. So we learn how to, if you would like to have your work, you have to improve your knowledge on the online, and you have to know how to deal with this. If you would like to have and keep your role in the community, you have to think about innovative ways of participation and so on. We used a lot the media, because I think the media played a big role to show when you have this Twitter speaking about a Syrian refugee supporting the host community, the whole community around him by creating this mask and buying for less than cents, you know, some cents, it's even less than €1 while it's hard to find it and so on. And the social media used to just spread the word and show this is what we have. This is how your refugee migrant resilience, this is how they do. I think everyone then noticed that the role of the media. So also using this is a tool and weapon to just stop this kind of negative stereotyping of refugees and migrants. Learning the language, even if it's online and it's hard, but even though if you would like to have a job, and pandemic shows that it's not 1 day, 2 days, it's what, not month, even though till now it's still. So if you said, okay, I will wait until everything is open, so I will study, then you notice now it's almost 2 years and nothing almost changed. So now everyone is become more clever to just think about, okay, I have no time, I have to move forward, I have to start now. So also it gives them time to think. So I think in this regard, we can say it has a positive impact on refugees and migrants. And I hope it's still, this pandemic is leaving, but also I hope it's give the host community the time even to think about even themselves, because in the way or another, we were all in one situation. There is no difference between being a European or being a refugee or migrants. We were all suffering from that. So I hope this give them a time just to think about the life is not easy for everyone, and it's not easy for the migrants and refugees who are already under a struggle and under bad and hard circumstances. So I hope this would help in changing the narrative with our support, with our work, to change it by our work and by posting. But even though normally it's changing positively.
I hope so. I always say the same thing. So I think there's a writer called Taya Selassie, and she says that identity is relationships, rituals, and restrictions. And I really like that, because the restrictions do bring us together, actually. When two people, for example, have the same restrictions, if they have the same visa trouble, for example, or like lack of access to a specific country, they still feel connected. And I genuinely think that this is what the pandemic has done to us, that it like kind of inflicted restrictions on all of us, but it's kind of like the weather right now. It's like it's something that brings us together, and we can complain about it together, and we feel restricted by it together. And I'm hoping at the same time also that it will allow people to check their privilege. Also, you said something about the digital access, that even the host community actually had some issues, maybe with updating their skills, with kind of changing the way that they think about traditional things. Especially, I mean, Aurora would know, in Spain, for example, remote work was a word that's like prohibited here. Like traditional companies would not even think of that. And maybe that kind of pushed towards rethinking what we thought was inevitable or kind of unchangeable. Hopefully will kind of make us rethink the things that we know Yes, please, Aurora. I was gonna ask you next. Please go ahead.
No, I'm just hoping that I got the feeling that this was a humbling process worldwide. Like the world is round, but somehow it got flat. It got flat. We went through the same thing, and governments were trying to handle it in many different varied and creative ways, but they still all struggled at some point and in different moments, right? Like the countries that were doing super good at the beginning, at some point they went badly touched by the situation. So I was thinking, wow, this is a really humbling moment. How is it going to affect for real? Like, how is it going to have an effect on governments? How they're going to look to each other in politics, in decision making? And I'm really hoping this is just I'm really hoping it has an impact. And in solidarity, humbling the first one, but second, solidarity. And it's a word that you said at the beginning. So solidarity, how can we have it more in our mouths so that we create it? Because that's also something from our workshop in resilience. The words you use create your thoughts. So it's a process and of the power of the words we use, right? And our power right here, right now, like going outside and saying, yes, let's become more solidar to each other. Like we can make it happen somehow in bringing these words that have a powerful impact to our day-to-day language using.
I mean, 100%, the words do create realities. And here also comes, like, if I want to go back to the stereotypes, that comes the words of vulnerable and right, and like in risk of social exclusion, or any of the negative words, and they do create realities. And then maybe here also comes the positive with words like solidarity and maybe unity and humanity, even humanness. So, I mean, we hope, I really like also that really ties really nicely with Shaza, with what Shaza was saying, is that also using like the media and the, you know, I know that a lot of it has been quite negative, but a lot of it has been quite positive also, I think. And maybe that is kind of, I'm hoping it's going to be a start to change the narrative that the media has about migrants, and hopefully they're going to start to talk about the migrant community in a more positive way. Seyran, what do you think? Do you think that the media is changing positively, negatively? I mean, there's a lot of factors that play here as well, which is, you know, politics and votes and right, like the weaponization of migration, the weaponization of the pandemic. It's really complicated, but I don't know, I would like to know what you think.
And I think media plays a really big role here, indeed, and kind of the view a lot of the times that the media shows is the way journalism works, the words they use, how they portray some types of segments or some parts, and it's all about kind of representation and showing it in a good way, kind of and also the way they kind of circulate one or another article, and how this becomes kind of a circulation in social media. It plays a really large factor in our understanding, and especially kind of tapping back into kind of the view of kind of migrants and refugees. Kind of a lot of the media, which was for a time kind of even calling it names, like you have some names for some types of virus, COVID-19 or the British one, or I mean, this is all kind of something that creates stereotypes. It really is using words, like Aurora mentioned, it has a lot to say. In the beginning, even kind of the names that they use about the different COVID types is problematic. because you kind of put that, and kind of blaming on something or naming something reminds me of the words of the famous Marie Antoinette, like, can't they just eat cake? It's like, as a person who kind of mentioned to me, this is a person that has medical background, mentioned to me, like, what gives you diabetes is also the same thing that gives you COVID-19, like bad living resources. It's a systematic change that you're not equally treated, basically. Something that doesn't come out really well in the media is the kind of reasons why. Perhaps it points on social change, but it doesn't point on the actual reasons underneath. For example, the knowledge about migrant health. Do we have the same knowledge about the different health of all those who are affected? We need to know more about the health of the different kind of different kind of parts or the different communities, because we all have kind of this focus on migrant health has luckily become more, and I hope this continues to be an interest and to be highlighted, because we need more information about the health of migrants, because this has been a lot of the research that is done is usually done on Western, and we don't have enough information about migrant health as well. So that has been one part that is really problematic in terms of the media, is that it doesn't really reply often why. It says more how and what, but the answers are more complex than that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I'm very interested in what you said about the research, and how there is also bias in research against maybe migrant population, against women versus men, against maybe older generations rather than younger generations. And it's and perhaps that's it's very interesting, or it's very necessary, the representation, right? That not just to and another thing you also talked about, like journalism, and something that has happened very recently. We were given some training, and we were talking about the representation, obviously, in journalism of migrants population, and the numbers, the percentage of how many refugees and migrants have been quoted in the articles about them was so low. So they always talk about them, but never quote them directly. And it's and again, that bias also goes more against women. I think it was something like between 30 and 40% that they were quoted, something like. But if you're talking about somebody, how can you not quote them? And it highlights a very deeper issue, I think. And maybe that's where not just representation, but also being in charge of our own narratives and being given the tools. So, like, don't give me a fish, teach me, give me the tools to go fishing myself. Like, give me the tools and the funding for me to be able to create my own narrative and to make my own interviews or make my own research. I think that's extremely necessary in this case, and not like just to move away at least from the tokenization that Anila was talking about, that they always, tokenize them. They ask us specific, very closed-ended questions also. So when you ask someone a question of a yes and no, you're not leaving for them the space to actually express themselves. So it still doesn't count, I think. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much. Yuan, I really want to know what you think about that, because Seyran mentioned, and I'd love to know your opinion, again, to give you the narrative and ask you your opinion, about the words that have been used. And you said that you were subject to very harmful comments, probably at the very beginning. How do you think that we can use this time? Firstly, like, how did it change? Were the stereotypes prevalent before the pandemic? Did they amplify during the pandemic? And how do you think we're gonna get out of the pandemic and get rid of those stereotypes? If you have an answer.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Well, my personal experience was in physical when the lockdown was still not that strict in Netherlands. One day, another Chinese friend and I went out for shopping, and we were just chatting on the street. There were two ladies walking in front of us, and they heard us speaking Chinese. They just looked back, checked us, and then suddenly ran away, ran away. It was a shock for us very much that, okay, people see us as virus, see us as human virus spreading machines. That it was not, I didn't feel much racism in Netherlands before the pandemic. And I experienced 3, 4, 5 times after it started. So I guess it really impacts very much. And to build on what Seyran and Shaza just said, I think media also play a huge part in it. As, for example, we heard not long ago that in the conflict of Palestine and Israel, the Palestinians who how do I say, who lost their lives in the battles, in the conflicts, were called as died, but the Israelis were called be killed. So it will shape people's mind to which side you're on and your attitudes towards different sides of people. And it's the same as other stereotypes also. And I think the best way of fighting against this is to have collective agency against it as migrants, as outsiders, and also for the storytelling. It's very effective way, in my opinion. We know that the Human Library, which started, I think, from Denmark, was a very successful example for storytelling, fighting against stereotypes. And it was physical storytelling tool to tell people their, I don't know if you've heard about it before. It treats every person as a book. So a library is like you walk into this place and you open and read a book means you listen to this person's story. And I think digitalization now brings us the possibility to move all these process online. To we also have similar events as New Women Connectors before, and also I believe other NGOs are doing it too, to gather these good cases of females, of successful women and whatever, to let them, give them this platform to share their voices, share their ideas, to let people know we are capable of doing everything and we're not just at the receiving end. Also, we are, I think it will take a very much long time to fight against this stereotype for sure, but we have to start and we have to work together. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuan. I mean, that's a hopeful note. That's a very hopeful note. And I suppose that's, we all agree that words firstly do create realities, and we do need to maybe work on that at the moment, especially in this digital world, because now words even mean more than actions, because they are more prevalent than actions, I suppose. So we do need to, we all have a responsibility, I think, that to work on that. Aurora, you wanna say something?
Yeah, just on this media thing, because they should have such a huge responsibility, and I don't know if they actually are held for this, or they. And so what I do personally, for example, I turn off the TV. I don't read anything. I don't want this influencing me. But that's as far as I go. How can we
hold them accountable?
Exactly.
That's a big question. I don't know. I mean, maybe we can end on that note and see what all the speakers think. Actually, maybe Diana would have something to say about that. If you have any experience, I mean, personally, I don't know if we can hold them accountable personally, but I do think that we have to also be a bit responsible on what we share and what we believe, and to do our due diligence in terms of the information that we read, especially not just about the stories about migrants, about refugees, about the COVID, about the vaccine right now. We need to do our due diligence, I think, and just be careful what we take for granted, I suppose. Diana, would you like to, I think I just want to kind of like highlight, okay, so how can we hold the media perhaps accountable for creating perhaps stereotypes and fueling xenophobia and racism? And I also want to, like, if you can say how we can do that, and then maybe end up on a note, what does the future look like, perhaps? To have more inclusive societies and for us to have more cohesive societies, more solidarity.
I was thinking now that I think we are here for an hour and a half and we shared the challenges, but somehow there is a positive vibe that leaves me hopeful that we can do something. Even having these talks and maybe going further with recommendations for stakeholders, connecting with the media, with the policymakers, involving migrants or refugees or young people, making sure we have this fair representation, including women in all the phases of the project or consultation. So working on that, taking small steps, but making sure we include everyone. I was thinking that in regards media, it's really important also to raise the media literacy, also in terms of how to critically think what we obtain as information, how to verify sources, which sources to trust, especially for the ones that start now to read the news or watch the news. So what about young people that don't know how to do that? So including that in the curriculum, making sure educators know how to raise their critical thinking, how to raise their competencies to do that. I think also in regards the digital tools we use, I think there's a huge opportunity to start the dialogue and make it safe and make it productive and make it effective. But again, making sure we have those competencies and not only the laptop or the internet connection. So going further to the competencies and attitudes and everything that would help us create and recreate the understanding of solidarity, which is sometimes reduced to helping the vulnerable or feeling pity about someone, and really understanding the meaning and the core of solidarity and what it means and what it can bring to our communities.
Thank you so much, Gianna. I love that, you know, the emphasis on young people as well. I think it's a massive, I don't want to say issue, but it is like a huge responsibility, actually, even on us, that the people who didn't actually properly learn how to do it in their age, perhaps to facilitate their knowledge at this point. And even maybe provide the tools for them and their teachers and their educators to have that kind of knowledge and critical thinking. Thank you so much. I love that. It's critical thinking. I think that is that's gonna save us. I think this is my personal opinion. So thank you so much, Diana. Seyran, what
You're muted.
Sorry, I preempted myself. Do you think that we can hold the media accountable, and how do you think that how do you see the future? How can we shape more inclusive societies in the future?
I think to create more inclusive societies, we need to keep media in a way still curious. Because I think one thing is that when we stop being curious about migrants, about refugees, about narrative, creating the good story, about the youth, about all these things, we stop actually listening. And that is what I feel has happened to a lot of these stories, is that we know this, okay, I know what diversity is, or I know what the story of a migrant is. We kind of have fed ourselves too much then, and to the verge that we know, and that I think this is something that we should always keep in mind, that we should continue to keep the curiosity, that they should continue to want to learn about these things, and not really in a way that is kind of contradictory, but in a way that provides solutions. So I think one thing is absolutely important, to kind of get the competence, but also provide trainings for journalists when they become journalists, to have solution journalism, for example, other ways of writing journalism, not just the old-fashioned way, but also challenging the media. Because I know in a few countries there are few large medias, but starting, other ways of kind of writing media, and kind of being a voice and challenging the existing bigger kind of media companies in a way, and holding them accountable. One way which is good is that the bigger kind of social medias now have different kind of solutions. When you see something, you can press something on that link that this is this is a story that is either it's a fake news or it's something that they have these limitations. But I think we as consumers need to also know that we are in position of kind of holding them accountable for each kind of story or article that we see. Because one thing for sure is that we need to also listen to stories that we don't like, unfortunately, because we need to hold them accountable for it. Because if we say that we stop listening to some stories, or some counter, or something that is, people who have racist views, or who have views that are condescending to our values, we need to meet that kind of in a way that we reply to them. So we kind of, not to kind of shut it down because it will just pop out in some other channel again, but actually having that available and seeing that and for face value. So yes, we do need to keep media accountable and find creative ways to do it together. But I think for more than ever, we need to tackle the curiosity, because I absolutely believe that we can't kind of be comfortable by saying we've given all the information there is about migrants and refugees, and there is so much information and we can't create more. We need to actually, find the gaps and continue to kind of have this as an actual field of knowledge, which is valuable and resourceful in itself, because migration isn't something that's going to stop. It's something that's been forever. It's something that's naturally part of the world, because we live in a world where not only humans migrate, but we see we haven't taken account of animals, nature. It's a part of our, we were speaking about the light. It's part of our light to kind of move freely, and if we kind of hinder this, we're actually hindering our natural existence. To kind of put it in a light, a kind of more how to say, resilient way. So we need to keep moving, because that is something that we do as an existence, and to kind of find a balanced way to do that.
Thank you, Seyran. I absolutely love this. I think I'm gonna, thank God I'm recording, because I think I'm gonna go back to what you said right now. It's I love that. I think, yes, we definitely need to keep curious, and the media, we cannot eliminate the role of media that the media has right now, but they definitely need to keep curious. They definitely need to keep exploring the different points of view. And I think we also need to do that ourselves. So when we talk about bias, we also have biases. We also only listen to what we feel comfortable with and what we agree with. And in fact, again, we go back to the accountability of media. So now the algorithm, it intentionally puts in front of you what you agree with so that you don't leave that platform. And then we end up really living in this kind of echo chambers and, you know, living in our own confirmation bias that everything that we see and read is going to confirm what we already believe. And maybe that works for us as well, not only as migrants and refugees, but also as consumers, as local community, as policymakers, as decision makers, as journalists even. So that's definitely something that we need to work on. And I think that critical thinking also helps with that, because critical thinking does kind of allow you to criticize what you already believe, and you are mentally prepared to receive information that you don't already agree with. And that's a massive probably responsibility on the media, but also on us as people. And we need to get comfortable with not being comfortable, I think, or with being uncomfortable. That's probably somewhere to start. Shaza, what do you think? Like, how can we move towards more inclusive societies post-pandemic?
I think I will not add, and I cannot add more than what Seyran she said. But again, I will echo that. Look, to stop the media is made by us. It's not something coming from outside. So media done by us. So if we need to change the media, we need to change ourselves. This is something we have to know. Second is we have to stop living in our bubbles. Like each one of us have his bubbles with his comfort zone and so on. And nowadays, if you look, you can find like even each channel is doing her work alone. Like there is no other one there. And we are not comfortable to listen to the others, to the difference. We didn't try even to think why they are thinking like that. And if you look, you can find the ground behind that, why they're thinking like that. And then maybe we can start building the channels, then we can open up. Like, it's amazing if you have someone from the far right wings to talk with someone from a migrant background or refugee background and see, maybe it is not comfortable for sure, but then you have to listen what he has in his mind, why he think in this way. And then maybe he has the right, because he think in a way, make everything following that his way. So he thought that it is the right way. And then if he listened to me. So I think the point is to open up and listen to each other. Then we can see, okay, from your perspective, it's right. And then we can start how we can be in the middle, how we can be together. Second is to be patient and to be optimistic. So, you know what, all the media is bad. You can do nothing. I will just shut, close. I will be isolated in my world. It's like, no, you have to fight by the same weapon. Like if the media is used against refugees, I think that the only way and the good way is to use the media in a proper way, which is give an positive perspective for everyone. So it's also, again, will be shown how refugees are resilient, and this is our responsibility as who we thought that we are leading, we are leaders, we are representing the community. So it's our work, and each one works. So we have to continue our work to do whatever we can to change this. So I think it's in our shoulders, and then we have to raise the awareness about the fake news and so on. So also it's our fault when we listen and distribute and disseminate the fake news or the bad news while we saying like, look, people are doing this bad things and it's a false, and everyone share it and share it and share it, and then it became a trend and they gain what they want and everyone look at it. So instead we have to I think raise the awareness about how media works. So even the normal people, the one who is not journalist or whatever, they are even knows how to use this media. So sometimes we support our enemies by our ignorance. We support our enemies, or we support our, you know, biases by being not educated or not aware about what is going on. So I think also this is for us first, and for also for the community. So I'm not expert in this regards, but this is what come to my mind. So I think this is how for now the solutions I can see, because again I will insist on, you cannot change it just like that, because it's made by us, and you cannot change everyone. So at the end of the day, you have to deal with it and see how you can improve it in a better way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shaza. Yeah, it is. I mean, all of these is made by us. And I love that you said us, because it's us as human beings, not as a migrant community or a local community. Yes, we have created this. It was created by us over a long period of time, and we've all been accomplices probably. And now it's kind of come back to haunt us at the moment. So yeah, we definitely have a massive responsibility. And like Diana was saying, you know, we have a responsibility towards the youth also, to give them the tools to fight that monster that we've actually created. So yeah, thank you so much. Yuan, do you have anything to add about like how can we actually move towards the future of inclusive societies? Hello, Yuan?
Sorry, my internet was not good. Sorry. Yeah. I don't have much to add on that, but if I'm a lawyer, if I work on law, I would very much love to hold this media accountable in a legal way. But as a person who do not work on these professions, I think one of the weapons we can use is social media. For example, there are these tags on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, where you can share your experiences, and there have this solidarity, this collective agency that people can to build on a power, a force to let these media realize, okay, that's something that I mentioned was not right. They said it I don't know, maybe because they didn't realize that it's not proper to say that. And also it's very difficult journey for us, everyone, to fight against our biases also. I personally, I can see myself growing until now, fighting against many biases that I used to have. And for people who, for example, have Islamophobia, maybe they never have interactions with a Muslim in a daily life, in a face-to-face. And if you have Muslim friends, it's almost impossible that you have Islamophobia. It's just like that, and it needs time. And we have to let this critical thinking to gradually shape your mind, shape anybody else's mind, and we have to keep our words accountable also, because what you say will impact others, and we have to be responsible for what we say and what we do. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuan. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like a collective rethinking. I think that's what we need, a collective rethinking of what we take for granted, or there's a word for it, the postulates, I think it's called. Aurora, I want to finish up with you. What do you think? How are we going to move towards more inclusive societies? Is it through the light that we have within, or by building our resilience, or by really fostering critical thinking?
I think you're saying all the main points that we touched today, and it was super interesting because we touched really the main points. And as Yuan was saying, I think really it's to be open to the others, exactly, to the others. Like if you don't go towards the other, then you won't meet the difference. So go meet the difference. Go listen to someone that has gone through, as you were saying, Shaza, like a completely different and uncomfortable situation, and just go for the uncomfortable, because it will. That's what it will make you grow, and us all together. So it's going into the unknown and asking yourself. You were always also talking about that. Asking yourself, when have I changed my mind on, like lately? Or asking your friends, like when you go for a drink later on, like, or what have you changed your mind on? Because it's a really interesting question, and it gives you the feedback. Hold on, it's not so common. It's not so obvious to change your perspective. So go for it. Go for the difference. Go for the, and open to the others. Like in your neighborhood, in at work, go for it. Choose the one person you know less and go directly to open up, because you will learn and you will grow.
I love that. I think we need to approach that even as a society in total. That keep the curiosity, like Seyran said, and even and I really love that. Like let's challenge our, and I think that even with the pandemic, we did have to rethink some things that we never thought we would. And if we ask ourselves, oh well, we changed our minds about Corona. I have to admit, I was one person that said, oh no, let's forget it. It's gonna be just like the flu. And I didn't realize, and I changed my mind, obviously. So maybe we should ask ourselves, okay, well, what else was I wrong about? Maybe that's going to be maybe key to kind of uncovering exactly what else we don't know, what else, maybe even challenge ourselves. Okay, try me. Let's see if I can change my mind about something today. That would be a very interesting social experiment maybe that we can do. But I mean, I love it. I think, yes, critical thinking. I think fostering the development and personalities, and I love the focus on youth. We don't usually do that, actually. So I love what Diana was saying, that yes, we do need to provide them with the tools and the educators, and fostering the diversity. And to rethink what we took for granted for a long time. And yes, maybe we can start by asking ourselves some really difficult questions. And I really think that the pandemic now is such an incredible opportunity to increase that sense of belonging to each other as a humankind. I think it's because we're facing this threat together, and it doesn't discriminate. The situations do, but the virus doesn't. So we do need to keep that in mind. We need to face it together as a human race. Perhaps that can bring us actually more together. But thank you so much, everyone. I mean, I kind of don't want it to end, but I know 2 hours has been really long, and I really want to thank you so much for everything. We're gonna keep the video. We're recording. We're gonna keep it on YouTube. I hope that everybody's okay with it. We're gonna send it to you afterwards, and I really appreciate your time and you being here and your incredible remarks. Thank you so much. Anyone would like to say something? Thank you. Love for the human race. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thank you as well. Pleasure to listen to you all. It's really rich.
Everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.